Yo, it's me Subs. Gonna make an actual useful video on this channel. I decided to stop making shitty meme videos and actually make good content for once. That's surprising. Anyway, since a lot of people are coming back to new disc priests in BFA, and a lot of people are making guides, I thought may as well capitalize on that. However, I want to take a different spin and actually talk about useful things on that. A lot of guides tell you what the buttons do and when to use them, blah 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 blah, but they don't really give you contextual information that you can use during the encounter. This is not really a guide, but more of just like how you actually play Disc Priest in an encounter. This is not an encounter guide, whatever is what I mean. Anyway, I'm going to talk about the main goals of Disc Priest. Obviously on Disc Priest, you want to cast as lot of atonements as possible for set periods of big damage. You want to identify the big damage periods during an encounter and cast as a lot of atonements, as many atonements as you think you need for that period, and do a lot of DPS into them. The next goal as a Disc Priest, you want to make sure you use your cooldowns as often as possible. As a Disc Priest with very short cooldowns that do a lot, you want to make sure you're actually hitting your Evangelism on cooldown and not sitting on it for 3 minutes and doing nothing. This is something you want to coordinate with your healers, and it's very important. There's no reason a DPS healer should just be DPSing when the other healers can DPS during the DPS healer's healing cooldowns. You see what I mean? It's just efficiency. To support this, you want to make sure you're able to cast atonements during big periods. This means not wasting mana. If you're casting Power Shield every global, you're not going to be able to do the first goal. And more importantly, casting Power Shield every global is just bad play in general. But you want to make sure you're not wasting your atonements. You want to make sure you actually gain value out of the atonements you cast. This means when you cast an atonement, it has to be for a reason. You have to actually cast DPS spells into it. Just casting Smite or Shadow Mend is bad, or casting Powered Shield and Shadow Mend by itself is very bad. You want to make sure you're casting DPS spells into it. That's how you get a lot of value out of the spells. This also means you're making sure you're casting the right spells for the situation, not just chain casting Shadow Mend for no reason. Making sure you're actually casting the right version of Penance for the situation. Make sure you're actually utilizing dot cleaving or casting dots on other people. This is important if you're taking Purge or if there's for dot cleaving, and if there's a lot of adds up, you get a lot of efficient value out of casting Shadow or Pain. And the final goal is simply not dying. It's very easy to die as a Disc Priest. I do it a lot and I get meme for it, but you want to not die. You don't want to make these goals go ahead of this one. I probably should have put this as the most goal, but the most important. But whatever. Now to actually give you some contextual usefulness out of what I just said, I'm going to show you Kil'jaeden. Kil'jaeden I think is the most easy boss to describe these mechanics with some meaning. He's a hard boss. He's very close to how your Disc Priest is going to play in battle for Azeroth. So, yeah. So what are the goals of Kil'jaeden? Disc Priest has goals, but what are the goals of Kil'jaeden? Well, Kil'jaeden's goals are firstly to heal DPS adds. These are very important. This is basically the encounter for a healer. You need to be able to heal DPS adds. Also, as a healer, you need to make sure you heal the healer adds efficiently. You want to get as much mana out as possible, but you also want to get rid of them as quickly as possible so their AoE when they die doesn't occur with anything. You also want to make your paladin's job a bit easier. This is a team game, and obviously the paladin can solo heal this every time, but you want to make sure you're doing as much as you can to help the paladin's job. For the second one, this is very important because the paladin can sometimes have RNG. The first one, you're just pressing your shit on cooldown, it doesn't really matter. You also want to make sure you have cooldowns up. Make sure you didn't just press Evangelism randomly for some dots and in between the DPS adds, the Darkness phase, and obviously Darkness of 1,000 Souls, which is the big things for each individual phase. Kil'jaeden is interesting as he has dots in every phase, which matter a lot, so you want to make sure you're healing those dots as efficiently as possible. They do high damage and they're on a lot of people at the same time. And this is specifically to Kil'jaeden, but generally fights have a lot of things. You want to make sure you use the mechanics of Disc Priest to the fight's advantage and not make them a disadvantage. What they mean for Kil'jaeden specifically is that you want to make sure you're using his first intermission to actually do something important, not just chasing your tail around and trying to work against the class. You want to work with the class. And what I mean is that during that phase, you want to make sure you're casting efficient powered shields and penancing the boss when you can, and just sitting there and regenerating mana. You're obviously not going to do good healing as a Disc Priest during that phase. You want to capitalize that and just regenerate mana. And if there's an encounter in BFA where you can't do anything for 30 seconds, you want to capitalize that and use that to regenerate mana for 30 seconds, because you can use that 30 seconds of free mana and let the other healers do things to work with the healers to cast more spells to the other fight. So you want to work with the fight, not against it. It's very important as a Disc Priest. Anyway, I'm going to talk about Kil'jaeden. So this is phase 1. Kil'jaeden was a very long fight, so you want to make sure, the biggest thing is you want to space your mana bar out for 14 minutes. Phase 1 kind of doesn't really matter. it's kind of obvious that you stacked up to 20 atonements, and you wanted to, because Kil'jaeden's first intermission happens right after the stage, you can generally just blow as much mana as possible to heal these DPS adds and all your cooldowns, because they're going to be up anyway for the next part of the encounter. And I fail the first rule here of not dying, so don't be me. You want to not die. Oh, look and go. Am I going to hit it? Oh, when do I hit it? Oh, I'm going to walk into it. Wow. Didn't even Hellstone. Unbelievable. And I'm complaining about it in my head. Anyway, so obviously I walked into this phase with 700k mana. Alright. That's probably what I'm going to enter this next phase with. That's a big deal. I decided to do it. You make a decision with your mana. Do I want to just sit in that whole phase and do nothing, or do I want to actually do a little bit and spend a bit of mana, or do I want to spend a lot? I chose in this instance to just sit at even mana, and because Kil'jaeden's healer adds regenerate mana, and I was going to use Innervate anyway to do healing to those adds anyway, so I decided to spend a bit more mana and just go into that phase at the exact same amount. As you can see, I'm just like really casting powered shields and penances whenever I can hit the boss, but otherwise I'm just standing around doing nothing and just casting powered shield on cooldown and penance whenever I can. You're doing this because you're trying to work with the encounter, right? Anyway, this is kind of like whatever. It's kind of like bullshit. You soak some things, you put some shields up. Anyway, this is when the first thing that actually happens. As you can see, I'm at the same mana as I was in the first phase. So now the first thing that comes up, the first goal. So we're trying to heal healer adds efficiently. So what you're doing already is ignore the innervate. This doesn't actually matter because this is the only one. This innervate doesn't really matter for this role, so just ignore it. Anyway, so I want to ramp as many atonements as possible and start using my cooldowns. In this case, I had Owl, but in BFA's case, I'd probably be just Shadow Fiend preemptively and then doing Schism Solace, Evangelism, whatever during this part. So I'm preempting the cooldowns, I'm casting Radiance when the healer adds come up, and I'm starting to heal. Obviously, I'm blowing all my cooldowns for this because they're going to be up for the next mechanic. I didn't really go through this. The next DPS adds are in 2 minutes. That's important. Because I know it's in 2 minutes, I can blow everything before that. Life's Wrath, Evangelism, Owl. Owl was exactly 2 minutes, so it'll be up exactly when I need it. Felons, and importantly, I don't use Shadow Fiend. I've identified already that Shadow Fiend is needed for the hardest point in the encounter, which is the DPS adds, the second DPS adds. These are insane. They were so hard on Prog to deal with, so I'm trying to save everything as possible. Importantly, the Paladin has also done something here, so I don't need to do that as well because the Paladin's able to use Aura of Sacrifice and cover a lot here. So I'm able to deal with that efficiently. We get some good value out of the mana. So we get to the next goal. And what's the next goal? Making sure I have cooldowns up for the DPS adds. Yep, I'm doing that. So what's the next thing? Obviously heal the dots in phase 2 and phase 3 as efficiently as possible. So in Disc Priest, I haven't really explained this, but how does a Disc Priest heal those dots efficiently? Now I'll just speed ahead a little bit. So what am I doing? Let's let this play out for a little bit. As you can see, I'm using this weak aura to base a lot of decisions, as well as my stacks of powered radiance to base my decisions of gameplay. Now what does this weak aura do? This weak aura does 2 things, or 3 things actually. The first number here on the left, this out of 4 out of 10, this tells me how many atonements I have. The right number tells me how many atonements I have. However, the left number tells me how many of those atonements are efficient. This is very, very important because Disc Priest has breakpoints just from efficiency standpoint between doing DPS spells and applying atonement. I believe this is still 4 for Smite, and it doesn't really matter. I just go with 4. I think it's still 4. This is bad theorycraft, but if I recall correctly, it's 4, and it should be the same. Anyway. So in this case, in this encounter, it was 4 atonements for Smite to be more efficient than casting another atonement. And because Smite costs significantly less than Plea in this case, for efficiency, it was better to cast Smite than to cast Plea for HPM, or healing per mana, and HPS, because I wanted to get as much mana as possible to do the DPS adds. I wanted to stack as many atonements as I wanted to. Remember, that's the goal. You want to heal the DPS adds, and you want to make sure you have a lot of atonements for it. So what this means is that you're working with this number. So what ends up happening with your rate, and also you want to press your cooldowns on cooldown, which in this case was Powered Radiance, and then BFA, this is Schism and Solace. You want to press those as many times as you can between those big periods of big damage. So what do? You're basically playing a game where you're alternating between Plea or Powered Shield and BFA and casting Smite and casting your DPS spells on cooldown. Or casting your efficient DPS spells on cooldown, which is in this case is Penance. Penance is pretty efficient in BFA, so you ignore this video, ignore this VOD where I'm actually probably delaying Penance because Penance is a lot more expensive back then. You probably generally should press Penance defensively or offensively close to on cooldown, and now I'm applying the dot. However, As I see, I'm starting to apply atonements because my number of atonements is down, but I'm alternating between that and Smite. I'm casting Powered Radiance as many times as I can in between. Then I cast Powered Shield and Smite. It's pretty simple. And I'm doing that, my mana bar is not really going down, it's sustaining quite well. And I'm able to do this over this very long encounter, abusing the mechanics of the fight to my favor to try and sustain my mana bar as close as possible. I think my mana bar doesn't really go down that much. This Kil'jaeden ads are in 30 seconds. Let's see how much mana I have. I go down 100k, but they're about to ramp up. Going down 100k mana in 30 seconds on Kil'jaeden was not a lot, I can tell you. You can spend a lot more on this encounter. I'm not even playing this well because it's Kil'jaeden. I'm probably on tilt or whatever because I was played like shit early in the encounter. But these are the general rules. I'm identifying this. I'm trying to play as efficiently as possible. I hope I'm making sense. Okay, anyway, the DPS ads are coming up and I'm starting to ramp up. I'm starting to spend a lot of mana here because this is the most important part. Everything else doesn't really matter between this point. And I played this a bit bad, but I'm trying to cast as many atomas as possible. Importantly, I can't as you can see, they're about to cast another bolt and they're about to burst and I need to cast Powered Barrier. So I just cut my losses and just start at 15. If you were better than me, you would probably cast even more, but you need to learn, another thing I should have mentioned is you need to learn to cut your losses and play with it. Obviously, it's probably better HPS, and overall, I'm probably going to do a lot more healing. A lot more healing just instance if I cast like a couple more pleas and then Power Radiance twice. However, the fight's mechanics demand me that I have to do healing right now, so I cut my losses and Evangelism start blowing all my cooldowns. As you see, I cast the barrier before the pulse, and then everyone doesn't really take that much damage, and I have all my cooldowns up. This is very important. You need to cut your losses as a Disc Priest and just play with the hand that you get dealt and react to the situation accordingly. Because of this, I don't really have many atonements for the situation, so I'm just sort of panicking a little bit and spending a bit more mana. But because I'm panicking, I need to still think about this panicking, and I need to still think about what I need to do, because there's still 7 minutes left on the boss. The enrage timer is in 7 minutes, and there's still a whole nother 2 phases I need to do. So during this instance, I'm basically just going to sit around and do nothing, and just cast Smite and Powered Radiance on cooldown, because those are extremely efficient. Powered Radiance, by the way, Powered Radiance might cost a lot, but applies 5 atonements at the same time, which is really GCD and mana efficient, especially if you start casting Smites into it. And there's going to be traits in BFA that make Powered Radiance even more efficient, because it lasts longer and does more. As you can see, I'm just doing a little ramp for the next healer ads. This goes back to the goal of this encounter, which is healing the healer ads efficiently. This is actually a big deal here because the paladin misplays a bit, I think. Or he doesn't misplay, but I think he gets unlucky. Which is like sort of the same thing for your paladin, am I right? Anyway, talking really fast. So what I'm doing here is I'm starting to apply Powered Radiance, and because my mana bar is sort of low, and I don't really have anything else, I'm sort of just like only casting Smite and Penance. I'm not ramping on anyone else, I'm just worrying about these healer ads. So I'd cast 2 Radiances into it. Actually, fuck up. But anyway. Right here, we'll demonstrate another thing about cutting your losses and adapting to cutting those losses. So see, the next healer ad survives for a long time, so I have to cast a bunch of Shadowmans into it. Now, this fight's really long, and I kind of don't want to do that, but you still have to adjust to that. So I still gotta evaluate my mana usage and start casting a lot more Smites. As you can see, I'm not really casting any more Smites, besides on the people who get extremely low, obviously. I'm just casting as many atomas as I need for the situation and just smiting and smiting and smiting. As you can see, this is what I'm doing right now. I'm waiting for the atonement numbers to go down. Obviously, you want to use movement to your advantage right there though, and still apply atonements on the move, and then just lay torrent. Pretty simple stuff. You want to identify points where you can lay torrent as well. This is pretty easy. I'm just saving all my cooldowns because the next thing, the darkness are about to transition. Kil'jaeden's at 40-ish%, and I'm about to transition, and I have 600k on mana, so I have to do the entire phase 3 where there's a permanent ticking dot on the encounter, and yeah, you basically have to keep healing the whole phase. You need enough mana to do that. Now I identified I could probably do the last phase with half a mana bar, so during this phase and the next phase, I basically have to enter the final phase with roughly half to 400k. I think in this skill I enter with 350, but you know, you just gotta cut your losses again and start smiting more, and maybe even go AFK, and abuse the other healer cooldowns to go AFK. You gotta be vocal, remember, as a Disc Priest. Anyway, this doesn't really matter. I'm starting to ramp because I'm immediately casting my cooldowns off cooldown right here, Because all my cooldowns came up again. My Lights Wrap is off, my Evangelism, my Owl is up, and there's big damage in this phase. There's lots of healing debuff, there's pulsing damage. So you want to get rid of that. So as a Disc Priest, I efficiently Rapture. And just blow everything again. I get my debuff right away, and obviously ×2 Radiance, ×2 Radiance. I actually apply dots here as well, I think. I cast a couple of dots on people after my Lights Wrap. Yep, that's what I do. And I spread it with Penance. That's the same thing going back to my goal of actually getting value out of the right spells for the situation. In this instance, that means Shadow Pain. Or, because Shadow Pain does a lot, you want to cast Shadow Pain, and it's relatively efficient. Anyway. Let's see how much mana I enter this phase with. I kind of don't really do anything after I do my cooldowns. I kind of just sit there and do nothing and let the Druid trank. I believe the Druid's about to trank or something. Or about to phase anyway. And I have to cast Power at Barrier. So it looks like I'm going to enter this phase with a third. It's kind of bad, but you know, you go back to the same principle. At this point, the only thing I left to heal is Darkness of 1,000 Souls. So I'm probably just going to blow Shadow Fiend right here. Just because I want to do as much DPS as possible. Now, Kil'jaeden individually has another goal, which I forgot to mention, is that he's a huge DPS check in the last phase. So you kind of have to value your cooldowns slightly differently. Now, I wanted 2 Shadow Fiends because the first Shadow Fiend is a DPS cooldown at this point. So I decided to make a decision to start blowing things on cooldowns simply for DPS, just to do as much damage as possible, to actually kill the encounter before we die to it. That's another element that sort of matters on Disc Priest, but generally, for most encounters, you shouldn't make these decisions. And this is only relatively true for specific instances where your guild needs DPS, where you can make these type of decisions. But as you can see here, I start abusing Borrowed Time and just smiting Empowered Shielding. Pressing Penance when I think it's good. In this instance, I'm probably about to Radiance and, you know, just keep healing efficiently. But as you can see, because this phase, I've identified I'm really low mana. And there's this ticking dots, and there's no real need to do more than just heal the ticking dots, except apply Radiance whenever people get the bigger dot. So yeah, I'm just doing that. And this phase is relatively simple. You just have to keep going back to your goals, remember, and not panic. Don't panic as a Disc Priest, you can't do that. And eventually you'll kill him, and you'll scream like a little girl. Most importantly, I'm trying to use my cooldowns on cooldown. Even in this phase, as I can see, I'm starting to ramp for Darkness of 1,000 Souls. Blah 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 blah. And yeah, relatively simple stuff. Anyway, I hope this video was actually helpful to some people. I probably rambled a bit, and it's probably better to talk to me on Discord about this. Tap discord.gg/focuswill xd. And yeah, I might make some more of these type of videos. I sort of don't really know how I should do this. Should I get it like a script or whatever? So give me your feedback. I'll think of more topics to talk about, but I'll probably be posting maybe an update to this in BFA or going through some VODs of my encounters in Uldir talking about something similar. But yeah, this is just like a general idea. Hopefully I didn't rant too much to you guys. Anyway, catch you later. YOLO.